I wanted to lose weight, or do you want to just understand what happens in the body when we eat something? Then this video is for you. I'm Dr. Mazhar Hussain. Do subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell so that you're updated with our videos. If you have any suggestions for videos we should make, do let us know and we'll look into it. Today we are going to talk about the normal blood glucose or the normal blood glucose level. And the reason that is important is because it will help you understand what happens in the body, why we gain weight and why we lose weight. The blood glucose level is not the only thing, but this is something we need to really make sure that we understand well, because this will have an impact on how the body reacts to food, how it reacts to proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and so on. So before we start, we need to know what is the normal blood glucose level in the body. Well, it's around 100 milligrams per deciliter. It can be slightly more, slightly less than that, but around 100 milligrams per deciliter. It makes it easy to work for us. So if we look at an adult person, on average has around 5 liters of blood. We are looking at a total of 5 grams of glucose in the blood. Now, that corresponds to 1 single teaspoon of sugar. So in the 5 liters of blood, we got roughly 1 teaspoon of sugar, and the body needs to keep it that way. Say, if we have 2 teaspoons of sugar in the blood over an extended period of time, for days, months, and years, it will have an impact on nearly every tissue in the body. Nearly every single tissue in the body will suffer because it's not really made to tolerate that high level of sugar in the blood, and the sugar is then taken from the blood into the cells, and it affects simply everything. So what we call that is hypoglycemia. When the level of glucose in the blood increases, then we talk about hyperglycemia. That is too high level of blood glucose. Now, 2 teaspoons would be hyperglycemia. Hypoglycemia is the situation where we have too little glucose in the blood. So even if we have just a half teaspoon of sugar in the blood, we would have hypoglycemia. Now, hypoglycemia, if the body has not really been used to it, it can cause serious damage. It can cause brain damage in a very short period of time. While hyperglycemia takes a good while to have its full effects, and we see all the complications that are seen in hypoglycemia, it can take months and years. And hypoglycemia is a much more acute situation, and we cannot really accept hypoglycemia for long. The body will suffer, the brain can suffer seriously. So it goes without saying, especially when we consider that these few food items, it goes without saying that the body must have a mechanism in place to ensure we get the blood glucose at the level we want it, whether we are eating something or whether we are not eating something. So let's look at this. We have apples, for instance. An average apple is roughly 20 grams of carbohydrates, 20 grams of sugar roughly, and it corresponds to 4 teaspoons. Now, if you eat an apple, and if there weren't any mechanism in place to lower your blood glucose level when you take it through your food, then you would have 4 teaspoons from the apple, and you would have 1 in the blood from before, and you would have 5 teaspoons equivalent of glucose in the blood. The body will not be happy. So it makes sure to fix that problem. And how it does that, we'll talk about that in a minute. Likewise, if you take a fizzy drink, a soft drink, 500 milliliters, and you're then looking at 10 teaspoons of sugar, 1 portion of rice is roughly 6 teaspoons of sugar. Again, if you take these together, you can see if you have a meal with rice and you take a fizzy drink with it, and afterwards you just take an apple, well, you've got 20 teaspoons of sugar, far more than the body can accept and far more than the body can tolerate. So we need to have mechanisms in place to fix that. Fortunately, we do have that. So the digestive system has a number of functions to ensure that whatever we eat is digested and absorbed, but there are mechanisms involved within the whole digestive system that ensures that the blood glucose level is maintained and so on. We don't even today fully understand our digestive system. We don't know how it absorbs things fully and what the conditions are. But what we do know is that this is quite important. You might have heard about about bacteria in the gut, microbiota that is affecting our health. And this is a relatively new area of research. We still don't understand that well. There's many things we don't understand well. But the digestive system, in terms of glucose, at least we have some understanding of it. If we look at the systems that are involved with that, it's basically two organs that are involved. In the fat state is the pancreas. The pancreas has the responsibility to ensure that the blood glucose level doesn't increase too much. So if you take an apple, if you take a fizzy drink, if you take some rice, if you eat a chocolate, if you take a cake, the pancreas will release insulin. The insulin will help drive away the glucose from the blood into the muscle cells, liver cells, fat cells, thereby maintaining again around 100 milligrams per deciliter, around 1 teaspoon of sugar in the blood. So the pancreas would be fully active when we are in the fat state. Now, in the fasting state, we have the liver. The liver would be stimulated when it senses, the body senses, well, we don't really get any supply of energy, we don't get any carbs or fats or proteins, there's nothing really to work with, there's no external supply. The liver will be given signals to maintain an appropriate blood glucose level. The liver will ensure we don't have hypoglycemia, and the way it does that is through glyconeogenesis, which means basically it makes glucose from proteins and from fats. It simply makes a new production of glucose from proteins and fats, thereby maintaining the blood glucose level. And we also have a glycogenolysis, which is the glycogen that is stored in the liver or in the muscle is broken down to generate, to produce more glucose molecules and thereby fuel for the body. We have a spelling mistake here. I think you can live with that. You would have to. Anyway, so this is the mechanism. The liver then actually makes sure in the fasting state that our blood glucose level does not drop too low, and that's where its role is. Now, obviously, this is far more complicated than this, but this still will give you a basic understanding that we'll build upon later on when we talk about insulin, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And you will get a better understanding of what the body is trying to do when we eat something and why it's trying to do it. So what's important to remember is the body wants to keep the blood glucose level at 100 milligrams per deciliter, roughly 1 teaspoon in the blood. It does so through the pancreas, that ensures it doesn't go too high, through the liver, that ensures we don't go too low. We'll talk about these mechanisms more in depth later on. That's all for now. Do subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell, let us know if you want us to speak on any certain subject and we'll look into it. Do share this video with your friends and families so that they can also see what is happening within their body when they eat and what blood glucose would play a role in their fasting or their fat state and their diets. That's all for now. Thank you.